normal races, qualifying would take place a day before the main event, but 2020 is far from a normal year. And so, the final race of the year saw the Pirelli qualifying race take place in the morning, followed by the main event shortly after. The route for the TGRSA Vaal 400 was almost identical to that of the previous day's race, and as such, the crews would have a much easier time identifying the route. The race loops of 195 kilometers each, with a short visit to the DSP sandwiched in the middle, and on either side of that, plenty of rip-roaring action. Let's start with the action in Class G, the hotly contested side-by-side category, where Nico Durant, partnered with Rickers Hutting, was locked in a championship battle with Werner and Leon Mostert. But as things panned out, neither of them won the TGRSA Vaal 400. A tight battle saw Dean Bradbury and Dierwold Els take third place in the podium, posting a total time of 4 hours and 26 minutes on the nose. Bradbury and Els had shown great form at times, and another solid performance at the final round of the season saw them clinch a much-deserved podium position. At the head of the field, Theo Erasmus and Edward Odendahl didn't hang around. The pair have proven that they have the pace, and at the TGRSA Vaal 400, everything came together for them to secure the top spot on the podium. Another stonking performance, reaping just rewards. Bear in mind that they played second fiddle to Hanno Bierman and Peter de Beer at the end of the first racing loop, trailing the early leaders by more than 7 minutes. But then, Bierman and de Beer had some issues, opening the door for Erasmus and Odendahl, who had no qualms about capitalizing on the demise of their rivals.
It feels like the Botswana 1000 today. Dit is vreeslik lekker. Ek kan net dankies vir die Hemelse Vader, vir my span wat saam met my gehelp het.
So that was first place and third place. But what about the second step of the podium? Would it be the Mosterts or Durant to clinch the title? As it turned out, Nico Durant had a clear plan for the race. In his own words, from the morning, he was going to thump it. And thump it he did, posting the second fastest time over the race distance. And even though he trailed the race winners by the best part of 6 minutes, he'd still done more than enough to secure his first ever championship. And while we're talking about the special vehicle categories, let's have a look at what transpired in Class A and, in this case, also Class P. The special vehicle category title had already been sewn up by Tim Howes and Gary Campbell, but having tripped up during qualifying, they were out of action for this main race. But the TGRSA Vaal 400 proved a tough event, which took its toll on a number of other competitors too. Husband and wife pairing, Sandra and Jaco Jonk, retiring after loop number 1 due to more mechanical issues. André Ferry and Hendrikus Pienaar, however, kept their noses clean and raced to the first podium of their career at national level. Their time of 4 hours and 25 minutes and 30 seconds was good enough for third place in Class A and a fourth overall in the special vehicle category. The winners of the qualifying race, Lance Trethuri and Adrian Roots, lost time due to more mechanical problems for them, a rare occasion, not to mention a puncher dropping them down the order, and in the end, the big man with his little navigator had to settle for third place in the category, which meant second place in Class A. Trace Price-Moore and Sean Braithwaite were the sole Class P entries, facing up to the more powerful cars in Class A. But the Bat pairing did their class proud. Not only were they the second fastest special vehicle in qualifying, but also the second fastest special in the race overall. A spectacular performance, which saw them lose out on the win by only 3 minutes and 16 seconds.
We knew we just had to keep it clean, and every corner you came around, things had changed from the previous lap. You know, there are a lot of lurkers and things that guys managed to pull up out the ground. So yeah, it was tough, and we just had to make sure we made it through.
Which brings us to the top step of the special vehicle podium and new winners in the category to boot. Bulla Buatis and Jay Pretorius are old hands when it comes to cross-country racing, but the Skalkberger Motorsport crew have been out of the game for nearly a decade. A great drive in Paris, however, showed that racing is like riding a bike. You never forget. The pair brought their Porter home in 3 hours, 58 minutes and 57 seconds, more than fast enough to clinch victory at the last round of the season. Let's move on to the production vehicle category, where the fight for the Class T title was going down to the wire. Remember, the Horn brothers had to beat Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen to secure second in the championship, but the brothers would face stern competition. Prince Louis and Vermeulen had won the previous round, and Terence Marsh and Lesego Zulu were also still in with the shout. So by no means was this a foregone conclusion. As it turns out, the threat from Prince Louis and Vermeulen never resulted in a challenge, as they first struggled with electrical issues before the front diff on their Ranger cried enough shortly before the end of the first racing loop. They weren't the only Class T Ford Rangers not to see out the final round, however, as teammates from the Neil Woolridge Motorsport Racing Camp, Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlinghuis, rolled their Ranger on the opening loop, making things just slightly easier for the Horns up front. Not that they were handed a highway to victory, mind you. Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott were given a 15-minute penalty for not letting a competitor through after searching for the route in the qualifier, largely sidelining them for the race. But the pair can be very quick and recorded the fourth fastest time on the day without the penalty they'd have been at the top of the standings. Third fastest on the day was that of Marsh and Zulu in the Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara. They finished 10 minutes and 28 seconds behind the winners, though, after starting from the back of the grid due to not completing the qualifying in the morning. It was a gutsy performance, which kept them right in the fight. The second step of the podium, just 1 minute and 2 seconds ahead of Marsh and Zulu, belonged to Malcolm and Frans Koch. The men from the Northwest Province showed excellent form throughout the TGRSA Vaal 400, qualifying their NWM Ford Ranger in third and bagging second in the main race. It was a power performance, but not quite good enough for the win. By now, it should be easy to figure out the top step of the podium, as well as the 2020 Class T title. That went to the Horn brothers, Johan and Werner from Malalaan Toyota. The former champions faced stiff competition in recent times, but prevailed at the final round, bringing their Gifbale home in 3 hours, 32 minutes and 20 seconds, a winning margin of nearly 10 minutes, as one would expect from the champs.
This season wasn't easy for us. It was challenging. We had to work hard. The team really worked hard every night, fixing the car in the pits. They had to fix the car.
The final class to cover is the big one. With 12 cars having qualified for the main event, Class FIA is by far the biggest in the sport at present, and the competition is fierce. With that said, Henk Ladegan and Brett Cummings had already wrapped up the title, their second on the trot, for Toyota Gazoo Racing SA. Even so, the new champions were sure to aim for victory on their home event. To make things even more spicy, all 12 Class FIA cars who started the main race at the TGRSA Vaal 400 also finished it. It was a tough day in the office for Ford Castrol's Lance Woolridge and Alvin Vonk in their Ranger. The pair suffered a suspension collapse in loop number 2 after a highly competitive opening loop. They may have finished the race in the results, but in reality, this was an event they'd just as soon forget. Ahead of Woolridge and Vonk came Johan van Staden with Leander Pienaar beside him. The Alfredo Duster pairing didn't quite have a weekend of smooth sailing either, but they completed the race nonetheless in a time of 4 hours, 48 minutes and 34 seconds. Rookie Philip Buerta, who entered a Nissan Navara for the weekend in Paris, finished just over 30 minutes ahead of Van Staden, cracking the top 10 in the process and completing what must be seen as a very successful maiden outing on the SACCS. Marius and Jolinda Fourie in their Ford Ranger pipped Buerta and Janse van Vuren by 26 minutes for 9th place, whilst Clint Weston and Gerrit Snyman recorded a time of 3 hours, 35 minutes and 17 seconds in their Mercedes X-Class for 8th place. 7th place belonged to Ernst Robertson Henry Kerner in their Redline Motorsport Navara, whilst TGRSA's Shamir Variawa and Dennis Murphy managed only the 6th fastest time in the race. Were it not for 2 punches on the opening loop, however, the works driver may well have finished much higher up the order. As it turned out, nearly 5 minutes separated him from Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer in the second Ford Castrol Racing Ranger. The younger Woolridge brother pegged 5th place after a powerful push in the last race of the year. A puncher relegated winners of round 4, Chris Visser and Donnie Stassen, to 4th place in their Total Exilium Toyota Hilux, just 2 minutes ahead of Woolridge and Dreyer. The big man was hoping for a strong result, but with the competition as tight as it is, a puncher can really throw a spanner in the works. Which brings us to the sharp end of proceedings here in Paris. After a cautious race, Brian Baragwanath and Tay Perry brought their monstrous Century Racing CR6 home in a time of 3 hours, 20 minutes and 46 seconds. Good enough to take third place on the day, and very nearly good enough for a second too. But Toyota Gazoo Racing SA's Chanel de Villiers and navigator Alex Harrow did just enough to retain that second spot after a strong performance that saw them lead in the race up to the 300-kilometre marker. A puncher put paid to their assault, however, but they recovered well to cross the finish line, just 20 seconds ahead of the hard-charging Baragwanath. And finally, to the victors go the spoils. Not only did Latachan and Cummings win the war in 2020, but they also came through with a win in the final round. Pair nipped at the heels of their Toyota Gazoo Racing SA teammates until 3/4 of the way through the race, when de Villiers dropped time due to the puncher. In the end, Latachan and Cummings made things look easy when they romped to their 4th victory of the year, crossing the line 2 minutes and 9 seconds ahead of their teammates. Another power performance from the double champions.
Yesterday I was really nervous coming into it, so I think the nerves got us a little bit, but it was good to have a semi-clean run and at least wrap up the championship yesterday. Like I said, today we just went out, had some fun.
So that's how it happened. And here's confirmation of the results from the TGRSA Vaal 400 Round 5 of the 2020 SACCS. In the specials, it was Buller Burtis and Jay Pretorius who took the overall and Class A honours. Price Moore and Braithwaite were second overall and first in Class P, whilst Erasmus and Odendahl brought their Class G sidey home in first place and third on the overall standings. Class T saw the Horns triumph in both the battle and the wall, with the Cox in second place and Marsh and Zulu complete in the podium. And finally, the Class FIA podium consisted of Latachan and Cummings on the top step, with teammates de Villiers and Harrow in second, Baragwanath and Perry taking third. And with that, the 2020 SACCS season drew to a close. There was huge joy for Latachan and Cummings, who emerged victorious not only from the last race of the year, but the championship as a whole. For the Horn brothers, 2020 brought another title, and one that they had to work hard for, with the chase going down to the final round and the final loop. In the specials, it was a joyous occasion for Burtis and Pretorius, winning the final race, and even though their last outing ended with a crumpled Zarko, Tim Howes and Gary Campbell had every reason to cheer after taking the category honours. And in Class G, a first title for Nico Durant and Rikus Hutting, despite a tough closing race and plenty of pressure in the class. Who would have thought when we started the 2020 season that the year would turn out as it did? Things got underway with plenty of spectators and smiles all round at the Mpumalanga 400, way back before the term lockdown was really a thing. But then came the COVID crunch, and for the longest time, it seemed that there would be no SACCS championship in 2020. With the easing of lockdown, however, came an opportunity to go racing once again, and the SACCS community cautiously emerged to take on the Bronkhorstspruit 400 in August, 6 months after round number 1. But then the cross-country community, as well as the SACCS organisers, rallied to put together a spectacular run to the end of the year. First with the Total Agri 400 in Berteville, which was a resounding success, and then the double-header in Parys, which capped a truncated and mixed-up season with some of the best racing we'd seen in a very long time. Yes, the 2020 season was different. There was no Toyota Desert 1000, for instance, and some of the races on the calendar were either cancelled outright or the venues moved. But in the end, we came together to do what we love, to go racing. And more than that, we managed to crown some champions, help our lads prepare for the upcoming Dakar Rally, and share our passion for the sport that we love. We'll see you again in 2021, hopefully without our masks on. The season-ending action from Parys was proudly brought to you by Toyota Gazoo Racing SA, Ford, Total Quartz and Pirelli.